Emily?
Is everyone ready? All right. Well, hello, everybody, wherever you're joining us from on this May 4th evening. We're glad you're with us and welcome to the 2021 Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame induction ceremony. My name is Dwayne Bonifer. I'm a 1991 graduate of the University of Kentucky, also a former editor of the Kentucky Kernel, and it's my honor to serve as president of the UK School of Journalism and Media. In my everyday life, I serve as Associate Vice President of Communications and Marketing at Monmouth College out in the land of Lincoln, which is soon to have one fewer seat in Congress. And depending on how you see the world, that's either a blessing or a curse. For the second consecutive time, and we sure hope this is the final time, this event is being held online. We hope to be back in person in Lexington in April 2022, when Kentucky is among the most beautiful places on this planet. Keeneland is also running so that journalists, has-been journalists, and those who like to socialize with journalists can invest some of their hard-earned money in the thoroughbred industry as well. And speaking of thoroughbreds, many of us gathered at various locations last Saturday to enjoy the fastest 2 minutes in sports. On the occasion of the 147th Run for the Roses, we were reminded of two things. First of all, bourbon doesn't taste very good when it's in a mint julep, and that you should never bet against a Bob Baffert trained horse on the first Saturday in May. The Kentucky Derby is a testament to one of our Commonwealth's great achievements, producing a thoroughbred industry that is the envy of the rest of the world. Another one of the Commonwealth's great achievements is its contributions to the profession of journalism. As the 10 men and women will be inducted tonight into the Hall of Fame remind us, Kentucky has been home to not only institutions that practiced great journalism, but also great practitioners of the craft of journalism. This past year has been a trying one for all of us. It's also why we need visionary, strong, well-funded. We need a strong press to give truly fair and balanced coverage of political campaigns so that we have well-informed voters, a press that will help us combat the insidious efforts to destroy the integrity of our republic's democratic process. And we need a strong press with a permanent place to work to provide a check of those in power and those who aspire to grab power and not easily relinquish it. The press is also one of our institutions that can leverage and utilize the tools that the people have put in place, tools that protect the people from reckless, careless, and irresponsible government officials and agencies. As Kentucky Supreme Court Deputy Chief Justice Elizabeth Hughes reminded us in the recent University of Kentucky versus Kentucky Kernel decision, tools such as the Open Records Act exist so that the press is encouraged to practice the free and open examination of public records, even where examination may cause inconvenience or embarrassment to public officials. As it does every year, this event stands as an annual reminder of the excellent journalism produced by people with ties to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The names of our past inductees, which I will post shortly in the group chat, can be found online at ci.uky.edu/JAM kentucky.edu/events. And although we are gathered somewhere in cyberspace, let's give a virtual round of applause to the current Hall of Famers who joined us for this event. Also in the last year, Kentucky has lost several individuals who were giants in the journalism profession, including Hall of Famers Maxine Cheshire, Al Smith, and just earlier this week, Lexington legend Tim Kelly. We extend our thoughts and prayers to their families as we pause to remember the special contributions they made to the profession. In a few moments, we'll meet this year's new inductees of a few housekeeping issues without the assistance of some very talented University of Kentucky. These are the folks who and cause the magic to happen. Quite and skills, we would not be gathered here tonight to celebrate great Kentucky journalism. Are John Cruz, Nathan Moore. We can't give them a standing compelled. Give them a clapping hand, a thumbs up, or whatever emoji you like to use to express your gratitude. And if you've been in Zoom meetings all day, feel free to stand up and give them a standing ovation. Thank you very much for making this happen once again, guys. Outstanding work. And speaking of great people, in a moment, I will turn things over to Erica Engstrom and then to Jennifer Greer. Erica Engstrom came to UK last year as director of the School of Journalism and Media. And although she's yet to experience a normal week of life at the University of Kentucky, we're glad she's persevered because she brings great promise to the UK School of Journalism and Media. Jennifer Greer has been at UK a year longer as Dean of the College of Communication and Information, so she at least has a small taste of what a normal life is like in the bluegrass. But you need to know that Erica and Jennifer make a great team, and we look forward to hearing from them in a moment. After Erica and Jennifer speak, I'll be back to induct this year's class. If you're joining us live, we hope to finish before 7 o'clock Eastern time, which will give everyone a few more hours to contemplate their Preakness picks. Erica, take it away.
Thank you, Dwayne, for those kind words. It's an honor for the School of Journalism and Media to host the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame. Tonight, through the magic of Zoom, we're able to gather and honor 10 outstanding individuals who represent the very best in Kentucky journalism. We look forward to the time when we can again celebrate in person. Until then, please enjoy this evening's program. And now I'd like to introduce Jennifer Greer, my boss, and the Dean of the College of Communication and Information. Good evening, Dean Greer.
Oh, good evening. You can tell that I have splurged for some decorations here to celebrate. We weren't able to have these on all the tables around our dinner tonight, but we have a centerpiece with the University of Kentucky and a little wildcat on the truck to celebrate all of our winners tonight and the inductees. Dwayne, thank you so much for doing such a lovely job of introducing this event, and then also thanking the staff members that make this possible. We would be remiss if we did not thank you and other members of the Alumni Association Advisory Board for the School of Journalism and Media for all the hard work that you do. It is our alumni that make this event happen. It is our alumni that pour through all the wonderful nominations and select the inductees every year. And without them, there would be no Journalism Hall of Fame. So thank you so much for your leadership. As Dwayne said, this is a time at the University of Kentucky where we have been investing in the School of Journalism and Media. It's been a rough time for the profession. but we are doing everything we can from the college level and from the school to make sure we have a strong and vibrant journalism program in the College of Communication and Information at the University of Kentucky. In addition to hiring Erica as a permanent director, and that is the first permanent director we had for the school in almost 5 years, which was huge. And we are so happy that you're here, Erica. We have also just recently hired 2 full-time faculty members in the School of Journalism and Media, and are investing in new equipment, new facilities to try to make sure that we are going to be able to support future journalists and support all of you in the work that you're doing. And so with that, I offer my congratulations to this year's inductees, and I will turn it back to Dwayne.
Thank you, Dean. Now let's do what we came here to do, and that's induct new members into the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame. The hall, which opened in 1981, honors achieving journalists who are natives of Kentucky or have spent a good part of their career working for Kentucky media organizations. More than 200 individuals have been inducted into the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame. The hall recognizes journalists both with and without formal ties to the University of Kentucky who have practiced the craft of journalism and made it a true art by giving a deeper, richer meaning to life. This year's class of inductees reflects well upon our Commonwealth, and all inductees remind us of the crucial role the media play in shaping, developing, and supporting our communities. We are honored to recognize them. Now let's meet the members of the class of 2021.
Michael Collins. The son of a lecturer since 2019, he has been White House correspondent for the nation's largest circulation newspaper, USA Today. Following graduation from Western Kentucky University, he joined the Kentucky Post as a reporter, then became Night City editor, a job that included writing editorials, and Frankfurt Bureau reporter. He moved to Scripps Howard News Service in Washington in 2001 as correspondent for the Post and the Cincinnati Post, then for the Ventura County Star, the Knoxville News Sentinel, and the Commercial Appeal. He remained with the Tennessee papers through 2 sales and joined the Gannett Company national staff in 2016. He is known as fair, intelligent, knowledgeable, and tenacious. In 2019, he won the College Heights Herald Award for outstanding contributions to journalism from the WKU newspaper, where he was editor.
Greetings from Washington, and thank you so much for including me among the 2021 inductees into the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame. Getting recognized by your peers is always an honor, but this one has special meaning for me because I know how many extraordinary journalists Kentucky has produced. I'm a coal miner's kid from Whitesburg in the mountains of southeastern Kentucky. Journalism was not an obvious career choice for me. But what was obvious to me, even at a young age, was I had this incredible fascination with the written word. Combine that with a belief that in a democracy, people have a right to know what their government is doing, and, well, you got a journalist on your hands. I worked with many terrific editors throughout my career, far too many to start naming names. They coached me, encouraged me, prodded me, and to be totally honest, at times they infuriated me. But they made my work better, and they made me a better reporter. I had many wonderful professors at Western Kentucky University who took an unpolished, naive young man and helped build the foundation for what would become my career. Several of them are Hall of Famers, and rightfully so. Having my name added to any roster that includes them is incredibly humbling. I also want to give special thanks to my parents, who nourished my curiosity about the world and the people in it, and they gave me the freedom to go out and explore it on my own. I still can't believe all the incredible opportunities I've been given, the places I've been, and the people that I've met throughout my career. But even more important than that is the knowledge that what we do makes a difference. Journalism matters. As journalists, we can improve people's lives, every part of their lives, from the air they breathe, to the food they eat, to the water they drink, to even where they send their kids to school. It's an awesome responsibility, one that we should and do take seriously. The last few years have been challenging for the media, with a decline of newspaper revenues and the rise of groups that believe that the only voices that should be heard are those with whom they agree. But as I said, in a democracy, people not only have a right to know what their government is doing, they need to know. It's been said many times and in ways far more eloquent than I can express, but journalism is a public service. I believed that when I got in this business, and I still believe it 30 years later. Thank you again for this honor, and it is truly an honor.
Bill Cox, only 30 when named Courier-Journal city editor in 1979, he sent a reporter and photographer to Cambodia, where they won a Pulitzer Prize for covering a Kentucky doctor helping refugees, then directed reporting that exposed dangerous doctors and nursing homes, triggering tougher state laws. Earlier, he was the paper's point person in helping pass Kentucky's first open meetings and open records laws. 2 years after becoming managing editor of the Honolulu Star Bulletin and revitalizing the paper, he announced that he was resigning because he had AIDS. "I have spent my career trying to shed light in dark corners," he wrote. "AIDS is surely one of our darkest corners. It can use some light." He died in 1988. Known for his mischievous humor, sometimes directed at supervisors, he was a native of Owensboro and a graduate of the University of Missouri.
Thank you for giving the late Bill Cox this well-deserved honor. He influenced some of the finest journalism the Courier-Journal newsroom ever produced, including a Pulitzer Prize-winning series in improbably international reporting. Bill was always looking for the next big story, so it made perfect sense to him to send reporter Joel Brinkley and photographer Jay Mather nearly 9,000 miles to the Cambodian refugee camps in 1979. Also on Bill's watch, in 1978, then Mayor William Stansbury went MIA during a highly contentious Louisville firefighter strike. Bill sent Jim Adams and Stan McDonald to find him, which they did at a New Orleans hotel with a woman who was not his wife. That produced a juicy front page scandal. Bill had been the CJ's environmental writer and cared deeply about that beat. So after the Purina dog food plant flushed toxic waste into the sewers, blowing up several downtown streets, Bill commissioned a prize-winning investigative series on the government agencies responsible for pollution control. Side note, I got arrested at that scene for breaking several traffic laws trying to circumvent police barricades. After Courier-Journal lawyer John Fleischaker bailed me out of jail, I went back to the newsroom where Bill, in the manner of the Chicago Seven, had hung a banner proclaiming, "Free the sewer explosion won." Bill made brilliant hires, people with actual expertise, so that the CJ could offer readers nuanced treatments of complicated stories. Mike King, a Herald reporter who became a top editor at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, said that Bill, quote, was always on top of the news, but had a great sense for the bigger picture, and he wanted his reporters to see that too. When people ask me who was my role model as a big city daily editor, I start with, well, there was this guy in Louisville who knew all the angles, always figured out a way to get you time and money and support to do your best work, and for the most part, stayed out of your way because he had faith that you could do it. That was Cox. The fun we all had was the icing on the cake. And oh, did we have fun. Bill Cox was a satirical genius. Working for him was like having Monty Python for a boss. Bill was a small person who favored boxy Brooks Brothers dress shirts. He stooped, which made him look like a little old man. But the unremarkable exterior belied a Rube Goldberg machine of a brain. It takes the entire thesaurus entry for wacky to even begin to describe Bill's humor. Quote, zany, madcap, offbeat, quirky, outlandish, eccentric, idiosyncratic, surreal, ridiculous, nonsensical, crazy, absurd, insane, far out, fantastic, bizarre, peculiar, weird, odd, strange, and freakish, to which I will add mischievous, deranged, lewd, and occasionally macabre. When Bill was headed your way, you never knew if he was about to assign you a story or ask cafeteria's chicken fried weasel for lunch. The baddest hatter I'd ever known is how former CJ him. Bill could turn an outrageous, of course, of the buffalo. Bill considered the state fair hokey, tedious, and utterly unworthy of the CJ's obsessive coverage. So, when former executive editor Paul Janisch sent a note reminding Bill to do the right thing by the state fair, Bill vowed revenge. Revenge, Bill Cox style, could be diabolically clever. He convinced a state fair buffalo handler to truck his beast to 525 West Broadway, where it arrived on the 4th floor via the freight elevator. Bill boarded the buffalo and rode it through the newsroom to Paul's office, where it deposited a steaming pile on the rug. Carolyn Lee, who left the CJ for the New York Times, remembers the time some poor soul, intending to call a podiatrist, misdialed the city desk and got Bill Cox. To Bill, this was a gift from the humor gods. Assuming an air of great authority, he diagnosed the patient's condition. Who knows if that person can even still walk? How Bill got that way remains a mystery. He came from Owensboro. His parents seemed perfectly normal. But by the time he was running the University of Missouri's student newspaper, The Maneater, he was already an accomplished trickster. Cheryl Magazine, former Herald picture editor, remembers getting her first reporting assignment note. Quote, is it true that the gold leaf on Jesse Hall is so bright that police are being blinded by the reflection? She didn't know what to think, but everyone was laughing. You got your first Cox assignment. Bill had a genius for acquiring letterhead stationery, the Archdiocese of Louisville, the Kling Peach Advisory Council, the Barry Bingham's Senior and Junior. If you found a letter from the publisher on your desk firing you, there was that moment of panic until you realized how it got there. Bill got hold of some aboard Air Force One letterhead bearing the presidential seal during the Reagan administration. So you might get a memo from Ronald Reagan to the Office of Management and Budget's David Stockman reading, quote, Mrs. Reagan and I do not think it would be a good idea for you to tell Congress that we're billing the medical expenses of the kangaroos to the government. Our sex lives are no one's business, end quote. Former CJ reporter and Bill's close friend Ann Cooper has a theory, which brings us to Bill's greatest journalistic achievement. Bill left Louisville for the Honolulu Star-Bulletin. In 1986, he announced on the Washington Post front page that he had AIDS, then thought to be exclusively a gay man's disease. Quote, I did it because I wanted to help others with the disease feel less alone and because I'm a communicator, he said. The dilemma for people with AIDS is that by treating it as a secret, we help breed more shame. The best way to get rid of that is to be more open, end quote. Bill never talked about being gay, but everyone close to him knew, and he knew that we knew, and no one cared. But in the 70s, coming out could have ended his career. Quote, we didn't know a whole lot about his private life, Ann Cooper said. He didn't feel he could comfortably come out while he was in Louisville. It was indicative of his sense of privacy. Maybe that's why he surrounded himself with pranks and crazy notes, end quote. Bill told his Honolulu readers that he'd spent his career, quote, trying to shed light in dark corners. AIDS is surely one of our darkest corners. It can use some light, end quote. Bill Cox was a very, very bright light. Thanks again for letting it shine in your Hall of Fame.
Monica Diaz. A tenacious journalist turned nationally known media lawyer, she has been a fierce user and defender of the First Amendment. As a Kentucky Post reporter, she exposed environmental problems and bad practices by state officials and contractors. After earning a law degree in 2001, she became a legal fellow at the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press in Washington, then joined the Cincinnati office of Frost Brown Todd. She leads the firm's media and First Amendment practices and operates a legal hotline for the Kentucky Broadcasters Association. She chaired Women in Communications Law in the American Bar Association in 2015 through 2017, and also specializes in intellectual property law. She is the daughter of Portuguese immigrants and a graduate of Western Kentucky University and the Salmon P. Chase College of Law at Northern Kentucky University.
I'm honored and thankful to be inducted into the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame. I'm especially happy to be inducted with my best friend, Michael Collins, who I met 40 years ago at the College Heights Herald at Western Kentucky University. An occasion like this makes you think back to why you got into journalism in the first place. Me, I wanted to find the truth and report it. The editors at the Kentucky Post taught me how to do that. They taught me how to use public records, how to hold leaders accountable, how to fight the powers that be, how to expose corruption, lies, and deceit, and how to stand up for taxpayers and the public. As a media lawyer, first at the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, then at a law firm, and now at the E.W. Scripps Company, I've used the power of the law to help reporters take on that same mission. Every defamation lawsuit filed against a journalist, every denial of an open records request, every courtroom door slammed shut to the media is an affront to the First Amendment, and I find all of that personally offensive. My first byline was 39 years ago, but where I used to relish front page stories, the kind that made officials uneasy, now I take the same pleasure in defending the media's right to gather the news and publish it. Unfortunately, attacks on press freedom and the public's right to know are happening with greater frequency and vitriol. Journalists and journalism itself are under fire like never before, but we can't back down, we cannot lose heart, and we cannot waver. We all got into journalism because we believed that finding and reporting the truth is important. And if that becomes a battle, the battle is worth it. We all work in service to the First Amendment. I cannot imagine a more worthwhile career. Thank you again to those who nominated me. I'm proud and very grateful to be part of this group.
John Lansing. Long one of America's leading news media executives, he has been an advocate for strong, independent, and ethical journalism, most recently as president and CEO of National Public Radio. A native of Minneapolis, he joined WPSD-TV as a photographer 3 days after graduating high school in Paducah, and went on to Louisville's WAVE-TV in 1980, later becoming newsroom manager. He was a managing editor, news director, and leader at commercial television affiliates around the country, then president of Scripps Networks in 2004 through 2013. After 2 years as president of the Cable and Telecommunications Association for Marketing, he became CEO of the U.S. Agency for Global Media, playing a transformative role with Voice of America and its 4 sister news organizations. He joined NPR in 2019. He is a graduate of Bellarmine University, where he has been a trustee.
I'd like to thank the University of Kentucky Journalism Alumni Association, who founded the Hall of Fame, and congratulations to my fellow inductees who were chosen by the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame Selection Committee. I'm honored to join the Hall. For me, it's a momentous occasion. But at the same time, it serves to remind me that big events in life can often turn on small moments. One day in 1979, as a 21-year-old news photographer in Paducah at the Paxton family-owned NBC affiliate in far western Kentucky, we had a visiting reporter and photographer from the big city, Louisville. I was in awe. The equipment and techniques they were using were things I'd never seen, and I wanted to soak it all up, badgering them with questions, annoying them on deadline. Lo and behold, a few months later, when an opening came up at that same Louisville station, WAVE, that same reporter, Farrell Pug Wellman, and photographer Dave Bussey recommended me for the position, and I jumped at the chance. Now, my beginning was not auspicious. In my first few days, I found Pug editing film on deadline when I opened the door to say hello. Now, unfailingly a kind and thoughtful guy, I pushed his patience to the limit when I accidentally stepped on the film of his key soundbite for the piece he'd been working on all day. Well, over the next 6 years, things improved. I covered every corner of the Commonwealth, in fact, filing at least one story from each of the 120 counties of Kentucky during that time and the time including when I was in Paducah. With great journalistic mentors like Steve York, whose beat encompassed all of Western Kentucky, and Pug, whose beat included the state legislature and all of Eastern Kentucky, I was given a master class in journalistic integrity, compelling visual storytelling, and an adherence to truthful narratives where others might have seen rural Kentucky stereotypes. I was always struck by the collective commitment to excellence in the Wave newsroom. Each evening, as the 6 p.m. news came on and we all gathered to watch each other's work, we'd critique it and just try to get better with each day. The newsroom was led by Ed Godfrey and Rich Gimble, and they always made it clear that being right was more important than being first, and that just chasing spot news was simply not enough. Their ambition for us was in our commitment to covering our community and state in a way that enlightened our audiences, gave them information to act upon, and improved their lives. And they encouraged the growth of our news photography and visual storytelling to such a high level that it still exists to this day at Wave. Great photographers like Bruce Carter, who led our photojournalism efforts after I moved into the managing editor's role, made it a mainstay of Wave's journalism, and the station rapidly became a magnet for recruiting and keeping the best photojournalists because of a national reputation for excellence. As my career moved on from Wave into new leadership positions in Minneapolis, Chicago, and Detroit, I took a big piece of the Wave value system with me. Highlighting enterprise and investigative reporting with high production values became a mainstay of our approach to fulfilling our news mission in those communities. Later, in leading the U.S. Agency for Global Media, including Voice of America, I witnessed firsthand what happens when journalistic integrity and truthful narratives are under assault in places not so surprising like Russia and China, but increasingly in once robust democracies like Hungary, Poland, and even Turkey, a NATO member. Today, anti-press authoritarianism is rampant and has been singed the fabric of the American free press. Truth is under daily assault by politicians seeking to gain or hold power, as witnessed by the aftermath of the recent insurrection at the Capitol. Today at NPR, I have faith that the American press can withstand the attacks on truth and uphold our sacred mission to inform engage, and inspire Americans to always move towards a more perfect union. We live that mission every day without fear or favor at NPR. My faith is rooted from all those years ago in the lessons I learned in Louisville. There's not a day that goes by that I don't reflect on them as a reminder that the work we do, all of us collectively, has never been more important. And I'll never forget my good fortune in getting to know the big city crew from Louisville that gave me the chance.
Keith Lawrence, called the conscience of our community in Owensboro by one nominator, he has reported for the Messenger Enquirer since 1972. Equally adept covering national politics, following the state legislature in Frankfort, or writing human interest stories, he is also a regular columnist, sometimes using alter ego characters to take stands on social issues or raise thoughtful questions for a community newspaper with a diverse audience. A skilled interviewer and writer, his ability to bring out the story from the person is as remarkable as his talent for bringing the reader along, another nominator wrote. He and his wife Sandra are known for community service, serving as foster parents and most recently chairing a fund drive for children's homes. A native of Ballard County, he holds a master's degree in communications from Murray State University and served in the Army.
I never thought I'd be standing here today. I always thought the Hall of Fame was for journalists who had gone to the big time and done big things. I've had the pleasure of telling the stories of one Kentucky community for 50 years, and that's important to me, but I didn't think it would be to anybody else. You know, none of us got here tonight on our own. There's always many people who have, in our lives, has shaped who we are today. Johnny Maglinger, the best reporter and writer I ever worked with, called me last year and asked if he could nominate me for the Hall of Fame. I told him I thought he'd be wasting his time. He wanted to try, and he asked David Ewell, the local attorney, Kirk Kirkpatrick, who I guess is best referred to as Mr. Owensboro, to write letters of recommendation. They must have written good letters because I wouldn't be here without them. And I hope they didn't stretch the truth too much. I started reading newspapers, Paducah Sun, Democrat back then. In 1955, when I was 8 years old. First it was comics and sports and Panlanders, and then the news. I discovered a writer in Paducah whose ability to string words together was fantastic. It made me want to see if I could tell stories like that someday. I didn't think I could, but I wanted to try. His name was Bill Powell. I wish he'd gone into the Hall of Fame when he was still living. It's a real honor for me to be able to go in with him today. In 1963, when I was a sophomore in high school, Ballard Memorial High School down in Ballard County, Christine Travis, our sophomore English teacher, asked us to write poetry. At one point, I don't know what I wrote. It couldn't have been very good, but she liked it and took it across the hall to the journalism department and asked Shirley Porter Williamson, the journalism teacher and newspaper advisor, to print it in the next edition of the Ballard Beacon. She did. And Mrs. Travis told me that I could write and I should take journalism in the fall. I never got to thank her. She was killed in a traffic accident that fall. Her obituary was one of the first things I ever wrote. But I called Mrs. Williamson the other day to thank her for changing my life. I told her no way I'd be here today. If it weren't for her, I don't know what I'd be doing, but it wouldn't be this. There's a lot of irony in this. In 1975, the Messenger Enquirer fired me. They told me I wasn't cut out to be a reporter and I should find something else to do. I don't know how to do anything else. It's pretty devastating because if I'm not doing this, I'm unskilled labor. But my wife had just had surgery, and we had a 2-year-old son who's now a reporter and feature writer for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And they felt sorry for me, just fire me like that. So they told me I could stay until I found another job. And as you can see with that sign over my shoulder there, I never did. I also, half of this award, or more, goes to my wife, Sandy. We met in that journalism class long ago, and went on to college, graduate school together, worked on the Murray State News. I got drafted after college, after graduate school, and I worked on the newspaper at Fort Hood, Texas, and Sandy worked on the daily newspaper in Killeen, Texas, next door. Then we started a couple of newspapers in Tennessee that only lasted 2 months. And we were looking for another job at Christmas time, and we heard about Owensboro, that a job was open here. They wouldn't hire married couples, and Sandy, who was a very good reporter, gave up her dream so I could follow mine. I wouldn't be standing here if she hadn't. So half of this belongs to her. I also have to thank the people of Owensboro. You can't stay in the community for 50 years if people don't support you. Don't keep reading. And I have to thank the committee, selection committee here at the Hall of Fame, because they opened the door for a blue-collar reporter from Western Kentucky. I'm not sure I should be here, but I'm so grateful that I am. Thank you.
Chuck Olmstead, a Boston native who became a legend in Louisville television, he brought a dramatic and engaging approach to his reporting. After graduating from Suffolk University and reporting for stations in New England and the Detroit Free Press, he joined WHAS-TV in 1975. He remained there until his death in 2009, except for a year or so at WCBS-TV in New York, ended by his decision to return to Louisville. His trademark reporting style, sense of humor, and signature hats made him a viewer favorite. So did his ability to ask hard questions and get answers, and his independence from supervisors. WHAS reporting colleague Mark Hebert recalled, if he was sent out on a story he thought wasn't relevant to Louisvillians, he'd tell them. I think they realized he was an institution. You just couldn't get rid of Chuck Olmstead. The community loved him and wouldn't have it.
Hi, I'm Candy Olmstead. It's been a long time since I've been down on this street. This is the Chuck Olmstead Street. And I'm here today because the journalism school at UAK is presenting Chuck posthumously with an award for the best journalist. I am so humbled to be here. But it's not about just the award, it's about Chuck. Chuck was a humble guy. He liked to talk to everybody. It was amazing. We'd go out to dinner, and people would come over and speak to Chuck, and he wouldn't care what he was eating. He would sit down and talk to them. I would wonder sometime if he was going to have heartburn, because some people would just sit and join us. But that was okay, because he said that that's what it's all about. He worked for the people of Louisville. One of the most important things to him was to make sure that when he did a news story, that everyone, regardless of who they may be, would understand his story. He wanted you to know exactly who they were, why he was covering it, and what it meant to Kentucky, and especially Louisville. We miss him, I know I do. I don't think it'll ever be another Chuck Olmstead, and I know he's here looking at Louisville, Kentucky today, because the Derby is on its way. I hope everyone's doing great. I don't know about you, but I'm sure glad that pandemic is almost over. Have a wonderful Derby, and good luck to everyone.
It's such an honor that our father, Chuck Olmstead, is inducted into the Hall of Fame. My brother Charles and I here are both proud that he finally got the accomplishment it's deserved. And for me, I don't know about you, Charles, but for me, I know when I was growing up, Dad would have a little bit of fun with me. He would throw me into the back of a news car when at a young age and take me on assignment with him, where I had a chance to see the community, the Kentucky community, see those in power, see those who didn't have power. A lot of times he wanted me to have both perspectives of people who had the voice and people who did not have voice, and to kind of see the struggle in the community. But in all, it was to get a better sense of who we are and what it means to be a good citizen of the Louisville or the Kentuckiana community. And through that, I learned a little bit about our city, Louisville, as well as the surrounding areas, as well as about news and how to tell stories. And he became my hero. A lot of people looked to my dad for help and assistance in learning or battling a problem. He'd always say, don't go it alone. Call me. I'm the Chuck Olmstead, the troubleshooter, the action reporter. So anyway, he would always try to find a way to help the little man, get a little person a voice. And that was one of the things that I felt that made him special and truly a hero, using journalism to combat injustices in our society. What did you think?
I felt my dad really helped me in the community, and also I was a newsroom baby. I go to school and then I go to the newsroom and I'm doing my homework while learning how to type and pull scripts and read and help find information out on stories. So I kind of like grew up around this business, which is why I got into the business more. I thought it was interesting and fun. Also, you know, Dad was always like, you know, learn to know how to do more than one thing. So I like, you know, we all want to aspire to be a reporter as good as he was, but he was like, hey, threw this camera to me one day and a real big story, and I was shooting video, and I got my hand in that. But the thing is, you know, Dad was always, you know, kind of a shy guy. People didn't realize he was kind of shy. You know, he shined on TV, but behind closed doors, he didn't like the limelight. But, you know, this award is really great. It is something that, you know, he would have loved to enjoy. Although he would feel he's not deserving of it, because that's his pride and everything. But, you know, I appreciate everybody looking out to us and actually give him this opportunity, because, you know, we still miss him. We still wish he was around to actually talk to. But overall, one thing he left us was we all got no hair.
That's definitely something he left us with. And you're right, all the adulation and all the hoopla, he wasn't big into that. You know, he would say, give the award to somebody else, an intern or somebody else coming in who's new that wants the inspiration. He was never a big person about being showboating or flaunting what he does. But it's a great accolade, and I'm proud of him. I'm proud of my dad as well, I know, as you are. And he taught us so much, like you said. He gave us hands-on instruction. He even got us a production company going,
yes,
and got us to the point where we are now. We're actually in the nation's capital, here in DC, both working for two different networks, international and a local, actually national network. And we do owe it to him. I mean, he's the one who got this and bred it and instilled in us. And that's the reason why I feel like he should be. This is a great honor for us.
Yes,
he should be inducted in the Hall of Fame, and I'm glad. And the Olmstead family is very proud of him. So, Dad, congratulations.
I love you and miss you.
Bill Powell. In 51 years in journalism, he helped Western Kentucky understand itself and its place in the state, then helped the state understand the region. He knew more about Western Kentucky than anyone alive, lawyer, historian, Justice Bill Cunningham said after Powell died in 1991. Born in Henry County, Tennessee, Powell grew up in Smithsonian, Kentucky. He began his career at the Princeton Leader in 1940 and was hired at the Paducah Sun-Democrat in 1942 by Henry Ward, who said 40 years later he was very prolific and could make more out of a story than anyone I ever knew. A reporter with a hard nose and a soft heart, he was a demanding executive editor at the Sun, but preferred reporting. After a brief stint at the Lexington Leader, he became the Courier-Journal's Western Kentucky reporter in 1971. He retired in 1984, but wrote a column for the West Kentucky News.
First, I'd just like to say how honored the family is that my dad is going to be given this distinctive award. He would be so proud of this. He loved writing, and I'll just tell you something about how his whole history started with writing. He was born in Tennessee, and then he and his family, when he was very small, moved to Smithsonian. He had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. When he was in about the 4th grade, one of his teachers, he wrote some stories for school, one of his teachers recognized his talent and told him that he should go into journalism. After that, that was what he wanted to do. So all through school he wrote. He said he wrote every day. He said sometimes if he couldn't think of anything to write about, he'd just copy something. When he got in high school, he played basketball. After the games, he would write about the game and send it to the, at that time, Sun-Democrat, and they would publish it. After he graduated from Smithsonian High School, he went to Murray, and there he wrote for the Murray Ledger. It was a school paper, weekly, I think. And he got it published. And of course, that was, you know, I don't think he got paid. He didn't care. He just got it published. After he graduated, he didn't graduate from Murray. After he left Murray, he went to a newspaper in Princeton, where he met my mom, and they got married. And he worked there for a while, and then he took a job at the Paducah Sun. And he worked there until he enlisted. It was the war then. It was 1939.
Mm-hmm.
He enlisted in the Navy, but he had some major foot deformities almost, and he couldn't stay, so he was discharged. He came back to Paducah and worked at the Paducah Sun, and he was there for 28 years. Then he went to Nashville Banner here at the
Lexington Herald.
And then he went to the Courier-Journal, where he worked for, I think, 11 years and finished out his career there. During his career as a writer, he met and interviewed so many people. He met
many presidents. He interviewed John F. Kennedy, President Johnson. His favorite probably was Harry S. Truman, because Alvin Barkley, who was from Paducah, Kentucky, was the vice president under Harry S. Truman, and that was probably his favorite person as far as celebrities. He spent many times, there were so many things going on in Western Kentucky at that time that there was the atomic plant came in 1950, which Paducah was the largest Western Kentucky town, but I mean, when you have 35,000 people arrive overnight, that was a lot to cover, and people had trouble finding places to stay, and he was always interested in the story. The main thing that he probably told Dan and his family, as well as me, is that his famous saying is that everybody has a story, and he always wanted to get that story. Even though we interviewed so many presidents and interviewed a lot of important people, he probably had more fun interviewing some of just the regular folk, because you could be down the street with him or walk down the street with him, and people like us would just see people, and he would see people that had a story, and he wanted to get that story out of them.
Yeah, I think one of his favorite common person was Peg Leg Lock, who was a bum, actually, lived on the railroad track. And he would go out in afternoons, hunt him down and talk to him. And then he would write about it. And then he had he liked the unusual people as much as he did the important people, really. He did cover, we found out later, it wasn't the last execution in Kentucky, but it was the last one until they reinstated the execution. And
that was at Eddyville.
At Eddyville, and he did not talk about that much, so it must have been pretty bad. But he just loved people, and
during his lifetime, he two other big projects were when he had to cover the land between the lakes, which involved Kentucky Dam, the building of it, construction, as well as Barkley Dam, which he covered how the power affected Western Kentucky, brought in industry, but I think he probably enjoyed the coverage more of the actual people, because a lot of people were displaced. They had to be taken out of their homes. I know when they brought in the atomic plant in Western Kentucky during the Cold War, and that was a plant that was an uranium enrichment plant that was built up for atomic bombs. He covered those people, and they were only given 10 days to move out of their homes, and that affected him. He wanted to talk to those people and get their stories. Also the stories where everybody got displaced when they built the land between the lakes. Those were major events that took place in Western Kentucky, and he covered 26 counties in Western Kentucky for the Courier-Journal. And I know one time I was excited because he was going to be covering the boys state tournament, and I'm a big sports fan. I thought that would be a a really cool job to have, but he told me that he wouldn't be covering any of the teams. He would be covering the stories of the people that attended the games. He wanted to find out their life stories, and that's basically how he went about his business. He never really, I think as Dana said, he probably never cared or even knew what he made as far as money. He was just a journalist. He enjoyed writing, didn't really have a whole lot of other hobbies. That was his hobby.
We would just like to thank everybody involved in this honor, and the family's just very grateful for him being recognized for his work that he did over the many years that he wrote.
The Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame and the selection committee, it would be an honor for him. Like I said before, he received many honors during his long career, but this would probably be the top one because he considered journalism to be a very important aspect in life, and he considered himself a professional, and he knows his peers, how good they were, and he would be very honored, and so is his family, to receive this award from the selection committee to the Hall of Fame.
Keith Runyon, a keeper of the Bingham family's ethos of newspapers as a public trust. He was the last member of their editorial board to retire. Born in Louisville, he also grew up in Evansville, Knoxville, and Lexington. He joined the Courier-Journal in 1969 as an obituary clerk. After graduation from the University of Louisville, he was a feature writer and reporter. In 1977, he joined the editorial board and entered the U of L Law School, earning a degree and becoming part-time counsel to the Bingham companies while staying on the board. After the 1986 sale to Gannett Company, he became the first editor of the Forum pages, then editorial page and opinion page editor, and finally editorial director, retiring in 2012, the year he won a Sigma Delta Chi award. He was also book editor from 1989 through 2012 and was a leader in the National Conference of Editorial Writers.
American journalism is so different now from when I joined the staff of the Courier-Journal almost 52 years ago at the age of 18. In my career, I saw nearly everything change, not always for the better. What didn't change, at least at the Courier-Journal, were commitments to accuracy, fairness, good writing, and a deep understanding of our region. My mentors have been inducted into this august body in earlier years, most notably Carol Sutton, Barry Bingham Sr. and Barry Jr., Billy Davis, David Haupt, and Merv Aubusman. To join them is a great honor. I tried hard to fulfill their goals, even after they were gone from the newspaper. And if I can say anything about my career, I think I bore the torch. This was particularly true in the realm of race relations. In the last year, it has become clear that we and other civic institutions could have done so much better. I, for one, have always believed that Black lives not only matter, but are every bit as important as white lives. Not to mention Asian lives, Indigenous lives, Hispanic lives, and most of all, the lives of women, too long subject to thoughtlessness and discrimination. We are all equals in the eyes of the Lord, if not always, in the words of our Constitution. Journalism is important work, and as we are learning, its legacy is tenuous. Big newspaper chains have shamefully acted with disregard for the vast collections of history in their clippings and photographic files. One such collection, at the Courier-Journal, is in grave danger and must be properly saved and maintained and made available to future generations of scholars, not to mention average citizens. Our newspaper building at 6th and Broadway, a local landmark since 1948, has become a relic and its press is silenced. It's now on the market with its future uncertain. More's the pity. The gathering of news today is evolving rapidly, and often it's confusing. So it's not easy to be a serious news person in times like these, and uncertainty is always a bother. However, I've long tried to follow the advice of Barry Bingham Sr., who wrote in 1959 that journalism is the best of all jobs for those who have the temperament, the mental and physical toughness, and the sense of humor it requires. My thanks to the committee and the University of Kentucky for this honor. I thank my family, my friends, and my colleagues for bearing with me and keeping me smiling over more than 5 decades. Thank you.
Pam Spalding, a photographer for the Louisville newspapers for 40 years, she has a unique project that may never be replicated. Inspired by personal stories told in photographs for the Farm Security Administration in 1935 through 1944, especially by women, she finally found first-time parents in Louisville who were willing to let her photograph the first year of life with a new baby. The project continues with the third generation and produced a 2009 book, An American Family, 3 Decades with the McGarveys. She has also been a photographer for travel and food books, worked for National Geographic, and was a member of the Courier-Journal and Louisville Times photography staff that won a 1976 Pulitzer Prize for coverage of school desegregation. She was a Nieman Fellow at Harvard University from 1984 through 1985. A native of Southern Indiana, she is a graduate of The Ohio State University.
Thank you to the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame for this honor, and to Tom Harden, the Courier-Journal's Director of Photography for most of my career. Tom was the kind of boss who enabled his staff to do their best work. I was lucky to be surrounded by talented photographers doing work that inspired me and who also supported my work and raised it to new levels. I grew up on a dairy farm in southern Indiana, and initially I wanted to be a wildlife photographer, but life gave me the opportunity to be a photojournalist. My job was to be the eyes for those who couldn't be there. To be a photojournalist means photographing breaking news like visiting presidents, the Kentucky Derby, natural disasters, and events that changed the course of a city's history. The entire photo staff won a Pulitzer Prize for its coverage of busing for school desegregation in 1975. There were assignments that were important to alert people to schemes of exploitation. Over the years, I worked with gifted writers like Ellie Brecker. We spent 4 weeks on a story about religious hucksters in Haiti who created or invented orphanages where children were abused in warehouses and then showed up at churches, particularly in the Bible Belt, with pictures of homeless, starving children and asking for money to save the children. Being a photojournalist means meeting fascinating people doing interesting things. I flew to Somalia with the Kentucky Air National Guard to show not only their humanitarian work, but also the poverty caused by war in the country. How many people get to stand on the flight deck of a C-5 military transport plane and photograph an aerial refueling while standing an arm's length behind the pallet? Actually, I was shocked when I saw how close the tanker was to the nose of my plane, and when I saw how tightly the pilot gripped the wheel and the expression on his face, I was very careful not to bump him. Because of my job, I rode a horse in the Lexington Blessing of the Hounds fox hunt. Now, that might imply that I knew what I was doing, but the truth is that I simply aimed the horse at the jump and let it do what it knew how to do while I held onto my camera equipment. A cave biologist led me feet first into a sinkhole just wide enough to wiggle down about 30 feet until I could sit up and photograph him searching for cave crickets. Tori Murden, The first woman to row solo across the Atlantic allowed me to shoot as her bare feet touched land for the first time in 82 days on the island of Guadalupe. Famous people welcomed me into their homes, including the legendary folk musician Gene Ritchie, writers Wendell Berry and Bobby Ann Mason. I followed public defenders who call themselves the best legal minds money can't buy, photographed heart surgeons as they held the beating heart in a patient's chest, and spent weeks photographing in a neonatal critical care nursery where tiny newborns fought for their lives. I worked with Katia Singal, a writer with the best ideas. We stayed with an Amish family for a week to show readers what it's like to live in a bygone century. My favorite story with writer C. Ray Hall, who was one of those wonderful observers of life, was about Father Biding, a Catholic priest who evangelized through the hollows of eastern Kentucky with huge speakers blaring his message. I remember standing back and watching the scene and thinking, a story doesn't get any better than this. Bob Hill, a writer with great curiosity about all aspects of life, suggested a story about nudist camps in southern Indiana. That story had special challenges to get publishable pictures. In 1991, I embedded with the University of Tennessee's women's basketball team as they persevered through the season to win their third NCAA championship. I'll never forget standing by the locker room at halftime when Pat Summitt charged into the room furious that the team had one offensive rebound in the first half. Lesson learned? Never stand where the door swings toward you when the team is losing and the coach is still outside looking at the statistics. My personal project evolved from a Louisville Times story. I have been documenting a single American family's life for 44 years. They are pictures of this family, but not about this family. It's a visual historical record of our culture through 4 generations of one family, and I'm still pursuing it. There's not enough time to recognize all those great reporters, photographers, artists, and editors with whom I work, but know that I was proud to be part of the team. After 40 years at the newspaper, I've returned to my first love, wildlife photography. I photograph birds across the country, and again, there are wonderful people who give me access and support. Thank you to everyone for a fulfilling, meaningful life and for this recognition. Thank you.
Melissa Swan. For more than 30 years, she was one of the most respected television personalities in Kentucky. First as a hard-nosed reporter, later as co-anchor of the top-rated newscast in Louisville, and finally as co-host of the WHAS Crusade for Children. After graduating from Indiana University and working for Lexington's WLEX-TV, she moved to Louisville, first with WLKY-TV and then with WHAS-TV in 1985. 3 years later, she was co-anchoring the 6 and 11 p.m. news, but kept reporting. 5 days before giving birth, she told the mayor about the Standard Gravure mass shooting and did stories on it. She traveled widely for stories, reporting on Kentucky families helping orphans in foreign countries and war-torn areas. For the Crusade, she told stories of special needs children helped by it. She retired in 2017 and is a member of the Kentucky Broadcasters Hall of Fame.
When you receive an honor like this, so many memories come flooding back of all the people you need to thank. The news directors who gave me a chance, gave me a job, and gave me a paycheck. All the talented reporters, photographers, producers, and editors who made my job better every day. All the things they taught me. My wonderful husband and 2 daughters who never begrudged me the time it took to get the story. I recently read on a Facebook post, what would your career be if it was what you imagined as a child? I never could have imagined such a great career. It was a wild ride and journalism was my ticket. I've traveled to incredible places and I have met fascinating people. I remember the day I stood on the DMZ in Korea talking to a Kentucky soldier, and then a few minutes later I was looking across the zone into the steely eyes of a North Korean soldier. Who gets to do that? A journalist does. I was in New York City the day after 9/11, and I sat down to talk to the famous Kentucky sculptor Ed Hamilton and his wife Bernadette, who had been dining at the top of the Trade Center the night before the attack. They told me their story and expressed their grief through tears, as did so many other people, including two mothers who one day were walking their young children to a fire station that had lost most of its members in the attack. And they didn't know how to explain to their little kids that their friend firefighter Bob would not be there any longer. I had a ringside seat at political conventions, presidential inaugurations, and plenty of Kentucky derbies. Some days were stressful, but it was never boring. And some days, you just go with your gut. One spring at WHAS, I was talking about my All Sacred Sweeps piece falling through, and the news director said, "So what's your plan B?" Well, I didn't have a plan B. So I said, "You know, I think I've heard about people coming to Louisville in busloads at midnight to play bingo, and I think that's odd." So I started interviewing the bingo operators and the people who play bingo at midnight, and after a few days, my phone rang, and it was a federal agent. And he said, "We need to talk to you." So I walk over to the federal courthouse, and he looked at me and he said, "You are interfering with our investigation." They were about to bust the bingo hall operators and arrest them for money laundering in the all-cash business. So I walk back to my news director, I tell him the story, and he said, "Fine, great. We'll hold all our stories, and then if they will give us the exclusive." And that's what happened. Pretty soon, Kentucky laws were changed. People were going to jail, people were arrested, and I was doing bingo stories for years. Very early in my career, I was sent to Southern Indiana to cover the escape of two inmates. When I arrived at the wooded area, there were all kinds of police there and a helicopter hovering overhead, and I was the only female there. So the police and the photographers start running along a railroad track. And I fall farther and farther behind because I was wearing heels. At some point, I hear a crack in the woods. And I look over, and out come the escaped inmates with their hands above their heads. And I'm standing there by myself. I have no idea what to do. So I shook my reporter's notebook at them, and I said, "Don't you move. Don't you dare move." Well, they were back in custody in a matter of moments, and I learned never underestimate the power of a reporter's notebook. The words in those books are powerful. I think of all the people who let me tell their stories, who gave me the happy and sad experiences of their lives, and I thank them for trusting me with that. It is really a huge leap of faith for them, and I will be eternally grateful. And talk about being a witness to history. Co-hosting the WHAS Crusade for Children showed me a community's incredible goodness and what can be achieved when everyone works together. To the journalists still on the job today, don't let anyone ever tell you that what you do is unimportant, unworthy, or fake. Your community and your country need you. So keep digging. Go with your gut. And never give up. This class of honorees know all about that. They have been in the trenches, and I am deeply humbled to be in their company.
Okay, how about another round of applause, virtual or real, for the class of 2021 of the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame. Thank you again for joining us for this year's Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Thanks again to all those who made this special evening possible, the folks who worked behind the scenes, of course, those who made the nominations, and most important of all, those whose lives and careers made society a more just, fair, and equitable place for everyone. As we close tonight, every good Kentuckian knows you can't talk about the Kentucky Derby at a journalism event without also invoking the wisdom of Hall of Fame member, the late Hunter S. Thompson. Dr. Thompson famously wrote while covering the 1972 presidential campaign, "When the going gets weird, the weird turn professional." Thanks to all the journalism pros out there who keep the faith and continue to help the rest of us make sense of what's become a very weird world. Good night and stay healthy.